debate at the World Economic Forum this time clearly is that is the world or global economy tilted towards recession or inflation and energy crisis will continue to really haunt us. And let's take that conversation forward with Romal Shetty, CEO designate for Deloitte India. Romal, so nice to have you back on ET now, and thank you for joining us. Romal, you are joining us from Davos, and what to your mind is the moot point? What is the debate and what are the deliberations centered around? Is it inflation? Is it recession? Is it energy crisis?
And as you mentioned, I think globally there's a significant amount of crisis happening, geopolitical, inflation, all of the things as you mentioned rightly. But when you come to Davos here, where I'm standing actually, and I'm actually next to the India lounge as well, on this particular street, you'll actually see 5 or 6 India-related lounges, whether it's the state governments, whether it's the central government lounges, and that sort of speaks about the optimism. And if you see all of those lounges, you have multiple events actually happening. So clearly, India is, in some sense, the real bright, shining spot globally, and it's really great to see, state governments and others, for example, wooing investors, talking about sustainability, talking about inclusivity. So I think in that sense, the mood in Davos for India is very optimistic. We have a number of business leaders who are actually here. We have the government ministers actually here. So it's fairly upbeat in a relatively, what I would say is in a slightly gloomy, global outlook.
So as we look into the future, Romal, what would you say were the discussion points? Because historically we've seen the World Economic Forum in a sense becomes the leading light. It really becomes the important forum on which economic and policy agenda setting is being done.
I think clearly, the key themes that are being picked up here is clearly, I think, technology one. Technology being at the forefront in everything that is, right, which is in terms of whether it is to do good from a health and equity, whether it is good to do from a business perspective, whether it is to bridge the digital divide. So that's clearly one big theme. The second big theme clearly that's happening in Davos is clearly on the sustainability. So I think a lot of debate, discussion around sustainability and how to make us, and including for a country like India, where we would be developing at a significant pace, how to still keep it much more sustainable. And I think the third is really in terms of the collaboration across the ecosystem. So this is a collaboration between businesses, the academia, the industries, and countries. I think that's really, these are the 3 key themes that if I had to pick up from Davos, those would be the key themes.
Well, since you mentioned technology, I'd like to draw your attention to what is happening in the tech world. Valuations have come down. Big tech, US big tech companies are currently in a layoff mode. The way how the tech sector has moved in 2021 versus how it is projected to grow in 2022, there seems to be a definitive slowdown. So do you think the global technology sector is going through a lean patch, or the sugar rush of 2021 is behind us?
Okay, so Nikunj, I mean, I would take a slightly wider view. I think what's happening is really here and now in terms of the tech layoffs. But if you really look at it over the next 10 years, this is sort of, as we say, it's India's decade. It's also the decade of digitization. So really, trillions of dollars are going to be spent on being more digital, whether it is factories, whether it's devices, all of that was going to happen. The layoffs, of course, have happened, like I mentioned, it's a more a short-term thing. But what is also happening is we are seeing corporates who are not technology companies actually recruiting some of these talent, because this talent is going to be used. This talent is not going into a waste. So it's a temporary phenomenon, but they would get into different areas, and corporates, other than pure play technology companies, will also absorb them. So I don't really see this as a phenomenon. It's a short term, but going forward, for example, I think the area of tech into everything that we do is only going to